I asked you earlier to text in your answers to the question, what is your favorite thing about your best friend? And so, of course, we got the obligatory responses of, I don't have any friends, and also my friend's mom is the favorite thing about my best friend. We got those, we'll acknowledge those. Uh, but some of the things you guys said were that they're funny, he understands me and thinks the way that I think. They're kind and thoughtful. They stand up for me. They cheer me up when I'm feeling down. They're not judgmental. I can be myself around them no matter what. They listen to my situation and give me good advice. They're just as stupid as I am. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I can tell them anything. They're trustworthy and understanding. They're adventurous. We read the Bible together. That's pretty cool. And then this person said, they know me more than I know myself. I'll tell you, one of my best friends is named Kyle. And just to kind of give you an idea of what our friendship is like, I'll tell you he was the best man at my wedding, so that's a pretty big deal. And when I went to college, I went to a school where I didn't know anybody, and Kyle was one of the first friends that I made when I went to college. And we just kind of hit it off. And one of the things that I love about my friendship with Kyle is I feel like when we're together, it's easy. It doesn't feel like it's a lot of work. And so we laugh so hard whenever we're together, and we have a ton of fun whenever we're together. And it's the kind of friendship where we can and do tell each other anything and everything, but also the two of us can sit in a room and watch 10 episodes straight of a Netflix show without ever saying a single word to each other, and that's perfectly okay too. And that's when you know you found a good friend, right? That you can do both of those things. And Kyle is one of the few friends in my life that even though we don't live in the same area, even though we don't get to see each other very often, we still make it a point to text each other and check in on each other here and there to see how things are going. But what if I were to say to you that you needed to make Kyle the most important person in your life? And what if I were to say that your relationship with him needed to be the highest priority of anyone that you had? That would be weird for a lot of reasons. But one of the biggest reasons it would be weird is because you don't know him, right? You've never met him before. And besides the couple things that I just told you about him, you don't know anything about this guy. And so the same goes for the friends that you guys texted in about. The reason that you say those are your best friends is because you know all of these things about them. You guys have had experiences together. You were able to come up with a favorite thing about them. But the truth is, the people that you guys texted in about mean about as much to me as my friend Kyle means to you. Because a person you don't know anything about isn't really going to be all that important to you. And so sometimes I wonder, when it comes to Jesus, if the way that we talk about Jesus is kind of like me talking about my friend Kyle. We get up here and we talk about how you need to make Jesus the most important person in your life. And your relationship with Jesus should be the highest priority relationship that you have. But what if you're like, I don't even know Jesus. I don't really know anything about him. What if you're wondering, why are we always talking about this person Jesus? What is so great about him? What is the big deal about Jesus, and what does it actually mean to follow him? Why should I follow him? And so tonight, and for the next 2 weeks after tonight, as we close out this semester of Oasis, we just wanted to take some time to answer this question: who is Jesus? And so what I want to start with tonight is this really simple but profound truth that Jesus is a friend. Jesus is a friend. And there's this moment in the Gospel of John where Jesus is talking to some of his closest friends. And what he says in this passage, I think, really sheds some light on what it means that Jesus is a friend. So I want us to read this together. And I want to tell you at the beginning that it's kind of a long passage, but I want you to really pay attention to it and read along with me because there's some amazing stuff in there. And then after we read it, we're going to kind of break it down and talk about what it means. So it's in John 15, starting with verse 5, Jesus says, "Yes, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me is thrown away like a useless branch and withers. Such branches are gathered into a pile to be burned. But if you remain in me and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want and it will be granted. When you produce fruit, you are my true disciples, and this brings great glory to the Father. Now I have loved you even as the Father has loved me, so remain in my love. When you obey my commandments, you remain in my love, just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I've told you these things. Why? So that you will be filled with joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. This is my commandment. Love each other in the same way I've loved you. There's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. And you are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves, because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. But now you are my friends, since I've told you everything the Father told me. You didn't choose me, I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name. This is my command. Love each other." So in that passage, what does that tell us that it means that Jesus is a friend? Well, the first thing I think it means is that he reveals who he is. And so think about it for a moment. If you were to talk about your best friend, and I saw some of these answers in your texts, many of you would say something along the lines of, I know everything about them. But the question is, why do you know everything about them? How do you know everything about them? And the answer to that is because they let you. They let you know those things about them. And I don't know about you, but every once in a while, you come across a person who are just like, the first time they meet you, they're already just letting you know every single thing about them. And when you meet those people, we're actually kind of suspicious of them. And we feel like something's a little off there. And the reason we feel that way is because we are vulnerable and honest and let people know who we really are with the ones that we have a relationship with people who feel safe and who are trustworthy. And since Jesus calls us his friends, he allows us to know who he is. He reveals to us who he is. And so Jesus invited these friends and his followers to be part of his life, to be part of his ministry, and he invites all of us to be with him. He says over and over to remain in him, to be closely connected to him. And he says, all of these things that I've told you about myself, I did that for two main reasons. And the first is so that you would know the Father. Right? Jesus says, I don't call you slaves because a master doesn't confide in his slaves, but instead I call you friends because I've told you everything the Father has told me. Jesus lets us know who he is so that we can know the Father. And the second reason is so that we can be filled with joy. right? As a friend, Jesus allows himself to be known, and knowing Jesus allows us to know the Father and have lives that are filled with joy. Jesus reveals who he is. But another thing Jesus does is he says hard things. And if you have a true friend, you know that true friends are willing to say hard things. And sometimes that's about little stuff like, girl, you do not want to leave the house in that outfit. Trust me, it does not look good on you. Or, they might say something like, you are actually not really as good of a singer as you think you are. Like, someone had to say it, okay? But sometimes they have to say hard stuff about big things. Like, you've kind of been a jerk lately. What's the deal? What's going on? Or, you know what? If you don't tell your parents that's going on, I'm going to have to. True friends are willing to say hard things because they care about us, because they want what's best for us. And as a friend, Jesus said the hard things because he cares. And so maybe you caught this. At the beginning of that passage we read, Jesus compares having a relationship with him to branches on a plant. So it's like when we're connected to Jesus as the source, we thrive. We're like a branch that's connected to a source. It's receiving nutrients. It's able to grow fruit. But when we're not connected to the source, he says we're like a branch that dies off and it withers away. And sometimes in our lives, we feel like we are withering away. We feel like we are running on empty. And Jesus says a relationship with him will fill us up. It will connect us to God. It will make us overflow with joy, but without him, we wither away and we die, and we're like the branches that aren't good for anything but being burned. And that sounds harsh, but it's because Jesus is a friend who's willing to say the hard things because he cares about us. He wants to prevent us from withering away, from running on empty. He says hard things. Also, as a friend, it means that Jesus sacrifices. Because friendships involve sacrifice. And if you hang out with someone who all they ever want to do is whatever they want to do, right? You have to do everything that they want, and they're never willing to give anything up for the friendship. That's not a friend. That's just someone that you put up with for whatever reason, right? Friendships are full of small sacrifices, like, I'm going to go watch your game, even though I think sports are boring. Or we'll watch the movie that you want to watch. Or we'll eat the kind of food that you like this time. But there also involve big sacrifices. Like maybe you had a friend who was willing to have your back even though they knew they were going to get in trouble for it. Or maybe you had a friend who was willing to stand by you and support you even though they knew they were going to lose some other friends because of that. Or they knew that they were going to lose some popularity because of that. Friendship involves sacrifice. And of all the sacrifices a friend can make, Jesus says in this passage that the greatest sacrifice a friend can make is to lay down their life for their friend. And you know what? I don't disagree with that. I was kind of racking my brain. I really couldn't think of a bigger sacrifice a friend could make than to be willing to die for their friend. And when Jesus says this, his disciples didn't fully understand, but we know where the story goes next. That Jesus is going to go on to literally die for his friends. And he displayed the greatest demonstration of love by laying down his life for the ones he loved And those aren't just his disciples back then, it's for us now. Remember, Jesus says, "Now I call you my friends." His sacrifice brought us grace, forgiveness, salvation, hope. As a friend, Jesus sacrifices. And then finally, Jesus is a friend means that he makes us better. Because a truly good friend always makes us better. And so we use phrases like, "Oh, she brings out the best in me," or he really helps me raise my game. And we know if you hang out with a friend who's really intelligent, like they help you become smarter. Or if you hang out with a friend who's a really good athlete, they can help you become better at sports. Or if you hang out with a friend who's a really awesome gamer, like they can help you become better at video games, whatever it might be. The more we hang out with those best friends, right, their best qualities start to rub off on us. We start to pick up the other person's best traits. And this is what Jesus means when he says that if you remain in me, you'll bear much fruit. When we have a relationship with Jesus, we start to become more like him. And I think the final two verses of the passage that we read are the most revealing of what this looks like. Here, listen to me read it again. Jesus said, "You didn't choose me, I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name. This is my command. Love each other." See, Jesus has chosen us not as slaves, but as friends. And his relationship with us helps us to become better, as he says, to produce lasting fruit. And how do we know when we're producing that fruit? Those last three words. It's when we love each other. Because Jesus as a friend boils down to exactly that his love for us as friends drives us to love each other as friends. The truth that Jesus is a friend, I believe, is life-changing because it means that Jesus has revealed to us who he is. It means that he's willing to tell us hard things because he cares about us. It means he's made the ultimate sacrifice for us. It means he makes us better. But here's another truth about friendships. For friendships to succeed, they have to be mutual. For friendships to succeed, they have to be mutual. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I am a really bad long-distance friend. When someone is not like living in the same area as me and I see them all of the time, I'm really bad at keeping up with the friendship. That's why I pointed out how impressive it is that even with my friendship with Kyle, I still do check in because it's not something I'm good at. And so when I was in junior high and high school, my closest and best friends were kids that went to my school and to my church. We did everything together. We had a ton of fun together. But then when I went away to college, and I didn't see them all the time, I wasn't around them all the time, it got really easy for me to get lazy with the friendship. And so I wasn't great about responding to texts. And when I went home to see family, I was too busy or wasn't thinking about it to get together with them and to see them. And so the friendship started to slowly fade. And now, if I'm honest, most of these people that I would have once called my best friends, like I don't even know what's going on in their lives anymore. And we can't expect a friendship with Jesus to be strong and thriving if we don't invest any time in the friendship, if it's not mutual. If the most that Jesus gets from us is like an hour a week, if that, no wonder we don't feel like we really know him. I also think that each of us can maybe relate with an experience of a quote-unquote friend who only cares about what they get out of the relationship. Maybe you've been around a person like this before. And they start to take advantage of us. And we start to notice that they only reach out to us whenever they need something. That they don't ever ask what's going on with us in our lives, but then they expect us to be a listening ear whenever the latest crisis is happening with them. You know someone like this. They only want to hang out when they need help with something or when they don't have anything better to do. And one-sided friendships aren't fair, and they don't last, because usually the person putting in all the effort in the friendship starts to feel used. And for most of us, our relationship with Jesus looks a lot like this. We become really content for the friendship to never really cross our mind until we need something, until like the latest crisis comes about. And then suddenly for us, Jesus is a friend actually kind of turns to like Jesus is a genie, and we summon him whenever we need him to do something for us, and then he can go back in his little lamp until something else comes back and I need him to do something for me again. But that's not a friendship. Jesus wants to be more than that, and Jesus needs to be more than that. Jesus wants you to know him deeply. That's why he revealed to us who he is. Jesus wants what's best for you, which is why he was willing to tell us the hard things. Jesus wants us to have a life with him for eternity, which is why he sacrificed for us. Jesus wants us to experience true living. That's why when we have a relationship with him, he makes us more like himself. And the more time we spend with Jesus in scripture, in prayer, in silence, in nature, in loving and serving others, in learning and exploring through all these different ways, the more we come to know him, the more we become to be like him, and the more the friendship starts to grow. So the question for us is, if we know Jesus says, "Now I call you friends," do we say the same thing back? And so tonight for you, maybe you're a person who's never started a relationship with Jesus. And hearing that Jesus says, "I call you my friends, I've done all these things for you, I want to have a relationship with you," you're like, I want that too, but I've never made that decision. If that's you, as we go into this time of worship, I'm going to go just to this room right back here, this blue room. I'll be back there. I'd love to talk to you about that. Or maybe you've got some things going on in your life that you just want some prayer over. I'd love to pray with you back in that room. Or maybe you're someone who's like, "Man, I recognize that the friendship between me and Jesus hasn't been mutual. And I really need to pick back up the friendship. I need to talk with Jesus. I need to check in and see how things are going." Like, let tonight be the night, as we go into this time of worship, that you pick back up the friendship and you reconnect. Or maybe you feel like you and Jesus are doing pretty well in your friendship, but it's time for you to let some other people in on that. Because I think about it like this. Imagine if one of your best friends came along with you to Oasis tonight, but when you arrived at the church, you looked at your friend and you were just like, "Hey, you wait in the car while I go inside and go to Oasis, and then when Oasis is all done and everyone leaves, then I'll come back out to you in the car, and then we can drive home together." Like, that would be awful and rude, but I know you would never want to do that, because you would want to introduce the people here at church to your friend. You would want like me or Danny or Tina or Jenny to meet them. You would want your small group leader to meet them. You would want your friends here to meet them. So if we have this friendship with Jesus, then why are we so content to be like, "Jesus, like, I need you to stay in the car when I'm out with other people. I don't want anyone else to get introduced to you as my friend"? Who are some people in your life that need to know Jesus isn't just a friend for you, but can be a friend for them as well? So as we go into this time of worship, if you got a decision or prayer you need to make, I'll be in the back. But let's this be a time where we reconnect the relationship with Jesus and consider who else needs to know about him as well. Let's pray. Jesus, we thank you for who you are. We thank you that you are a friend and that you call us friends, that you have allowed us to know you, and that you want what's best for us, that you sacrifice for us, and that we can become more like you. So would that be a process that we continue? Would it be a relationship we invest in? And would it be a relationship we invite others to participate in as well?